Jones Golf Trail in Alabama just celebrated their 20th year. Their 10th millionth golfer came last year. So these programs are working for these other states, and Georgia has just not done anything to help get this going. I have native Georgia, 55 years, have a golf marketing company, certainly know the area, certainly know how to reach people in terms of getting people here to Georgia. The money's out there and we're losing it, so that's what we need your help on. I look forward to anything I can answer, any questions I can do to get you any more information, but I certainly appreciate the time. We're going to be back actually next Wednesday, and my representative Kirby is going to be introducing us as the Georgia Golf Trail before y'all get started in the session. So thanks again. I appreciate your time today, and anything I can do, I appreciate everybody's help.
Thank you very much, Doug, and we look forward to your coming back. We're going to, oh, I'm sorry. Sure. Well, we have another group that's got to come in here in just a few minutes.
Are you 20, I guess?
What are you, no, what's your number? 20?
Press your button.
Press your button and we can pick you up.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I just had a quick question. You said 10 million at the Robert Trent Jones Golf Trail.
You said 6 million golf in 20 years.
Okay. Estimate. What has that meant in actual revenue to Alabama?
Well, actually, they had gone from, they started in 1993, about $300 million for golf revenue. And they came up with this great idea. They used to be one of my clients in their golf marketing companies. They're now over $2 billion in golf revenue. And that's Alabama. So
Just making sure.
we have so much more here in
Live's got the lead.
we've just never done it. So that's kind of the biggest.
Thank you. We're going ahead and do House Resolution 1038. Mr. Chairman, if you'll present House Resolution 1038.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It looks like all of these bills, my committee's been essentially made here for me because all the bills are mine, but I apologize, and that's not intentional. But this is a pretty interesting resolution, and again, we're on a short timetable. And I hope that you'll support this. This essentially recognizes the Department of Education and all the education systems and how it integrates in with our economic development throughout the state. And with that, I think I'll just be very short and very, very brief because I think Mr. Roy Bowen would like to address this as well. But this is a pretty huge resolution, and especially since we're going down the path of helping our industry create jobs. So I'll just sit with that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call on Roy Bowen now, the Georgia Association of Manufacturers, to speak to the bill, or the resolution, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. My name is Roy Bowen. I'm president of the Georgia Association of Manufacturers. And Chairman Stevens, I thank you very much for authoring this resolution. We certainly agree wholeheartedly with each of the whereas clauses in the resolution. And the Georgia Association of Manufacturers is committed to the governor, to the General Assembly, and each of the state agencies, departments, and institutions cited in the resolution to further secure Georgia as the #1 state for business and manufacturing. You know, we are really very encouraged by the growing perspective from manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and consultants to every component of the supply chain that America is on the tipping point of reshoring manufacturing investment and jobs, and particularly from China. And our collective efforts will continue to be ensuring that Georgia is prepared to compete for this investment by providing an inviting business climate and an available and skilled workforce. As manufacturers, we have seen our competitive position globally and vis-a-vis our neighboring states improve considerably, thanks to the sound public policy decisions that emanate from this General Assembly and their implementation. I will tell you that your actions as members of the General Assembly can be credited with attracting hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, not only in new manufacturing operations, but in expansions and the upgrading of existing manufacturing plants. And this new investment has resulted in the creation of more than 12,000 new manufacturing jobs in Georgia over just the past 3 years, and of nearly 25,000 additional service and support businesses. Now, Dr. Ludwig's statement that America is poised to lead the next manufacturing renaissance is supported by evidence right here in Georgia and by a comprehensive study by the highly respected global business consulting firm of the Boston Consulting Group. Via this resolution, you have sent another clear message to manufacturers and their employees, your constituents, that manufacturing matters and is an essential component to the state's economy. And again, I thank you for introducing this resolution and urge its adoption. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We have before you House Resolution 1038. All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of House Resolution 1038 say aye. Aye. Those opposed by the light sign. Thank you very much. House Resolution 1038, Representative Stevens is on its way to the rules.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see Representative Caldwell.
I don't either.
And in light of that, I would request that we postpone this one so that he could present itself. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, just take a point of personal privilege. I hope that all the members will go to the clerk's office and grab the bill that we just passed and sign on to it. It'll send a great message back to your districts.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I move on to House Bill 927 for a hearing?
927, yes, sir. And
Okay.
that's yours as well. And this is just a hearing for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's one person here maybe to speak on the bill. The impetus behind this bill is to allow depressed areas in all of our cities throughout the state that might have a need for an enterprise zone, some tweak in there, and it's permissive language. Essentially, there's no state dollars involved in this at all. In my particular area, on Broughton Street in downtown Savannah, this was an attempt to try to allow the city themselves to allow an area for an enterprise zone, which would, and again, we're just a public hearing, and we're going to move from at least 20 members to 5 full-time employees, and we're going to move from an inventory of $1 million, not to exceed $1 million. So what the intent is here is to spur some of the areas all over our state that may be depressed, that may be a need, and of course at the proper time, whenever we come back, we would like to possibly put a sunset to make sure this is working as well. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions, I'll accept any, and I think we have somebody to speak on the bill.
Okay. Are there any questions from the committee to the chairman? Okay. Mike, if you would, from Savannah Downtown Business?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Chairman Stevens and Vice Chairman Green. I'm Mike Vack, where I'm here representing the Savannah Downtown Business Association. This legislation is really brought to address a couple of problems that we have in coastal Georgia. One is we have some rather large retail merchants who move their inventory out of Georgia into South Carolina to escape the retail inventory tax that they face each year. So we have been looking for 2 years in how to come up with a formula to resolve this. And there is a provision in the law, in the Freeport legislation. There's Freeport 1 that applies to manufacturing, large warehousing, and bonded warehousing for throughput out of the state. And there's Freeport 2 that was put into effect a couple of years ago, but no jurisdiction really has taken any steps to trigger Freeport 2. What Freeport 2 does, it gives a city or county the capability to call for a referendum to remove jurisdiction-wide retail inventory from inventory tax, basically the same as Freeport 1, either on a 20, 40, 60, 80, or 100% basis till the end of time. We knew that that was not going to happen. That represents a significant amount of income for any jurisdiction. So what we tried to do was to create something that could be rifle shot either to a specific area or to specific facilities. It just so happens that there was an exemption in Freeport 2 that applies to facilities that have retail inventory and have 5,000 jobs. Most likely this was a potential fulfillment center. What we did is we played off of that and looked at targeting facilities that had 25 employees and an inventory above $1 million. But and conceptually that worked. Once we got back and started talking to our folks and scratching our heads, we said those numbers are backwards. We really need to be talking about 5 employees and an inventory not to exceed $1 million that then drives us down to those small businesses. And so what this does, it allows a local jurisdiction to pass a referendum that would trigger this exception to allow them to take that inventory off of the tax rolls to small businesses who meet the numeric qualifications and have a financial tie to an enterprise zone, i.e. creating jobs through their business that's not in an enterprise zone for people who live within the enterprise zone, or other criteria that the city or county could come up with so that they could see additional stimulation within an enterprise zone that would come from potentially outside the enterprise zone. And that's what this concept is. So what we're asking for is the numbers in the legislation to be changed. We do not have a problem with the sunset. I think a 10-year sunset works very well. It will take local governments several years to get their arms around this, and we think this is something that can be very proactively used, not only in Savannah, not only on Broughton Street, but in jurisdictions around the state to truly stimulate some activity for these smaller merchants who don't have a very large inventory that they're maintaining, but who are hit every year with a penalty in the tax that they have to pay for the inventory that they do maintain. With that, I thank you for your interest. I look forward to coming back in the next couple of days with I would assuming a committee sub, and I'll be glad to answer any questions anyone would have.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Yes.
First of all, the concept of enterprise zone, as I know it, I'm very supportive of. So what I'm trying to get my arms wrapped around this particular legislation, what is it, I guess I may need a lawyer, what does the present enterprise legislation allow us to do, and how, if we add, how does this being changed make it work?
This does not change the enterprise zone legislation at all. The enterprise zone basically is housed within the Constitution of the state, and there are certain very limited criteria that a city or county have to comply with in order to create an enterprise zone. This does not create an enterprise zone, but hinges the capability to take this tax exemption on an economic relationship to that enterprise zone. It's very similar to what we see in terms of tax credits within tax allocation districts, where you have a tax allocation district that would create tax credits for folks who create jobs within that district who aren't necessarily located in that district. For example, a hotel that would be built on Hutchinson Island in Savannah that would commit to hiring individuals that live within that Martin Luther King enterprise zone area, they would get those tax credits even though they're not in a per se enterprise zone.
Do we have anyone else that would like to ask a question? Yes. And we know which one you are now.
We don't have no. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question. I was reading it, and for the size of it, I like, because tell me what it would mean to, like a tire rack at Midway, I know the inventory is probably a couple of million employees, probably 50, 60, but because a lot of times we do things that does not hit that smaller business,
Right.
so they can take advantage of it.
Well, and that's one of the challenges here, trying to figure out what the numbers are. So we felt that if we could get a low enough floor, i.e. 5 on the employee side, then we could look at perhaps juggling the inventory side. Now, if when we're talking about an inventory of $1 million, keep in mind we're not actually talking about an inventory of $1 million. We're talking about a taxable amount of $1 million of inventory. So that million is actually in excess of $2 million in inventory. In order for a business really to qualify with this, they simply would need to employ their accountants to make sure that when they take their inventory and look at what they've got at the end of the year, that they're not exceeding that $1 million trigger, and then that inventory is exempt. Obviously, anything above that would be taxable, and then if you go above the $1 million, then it would be the entire thing would be taxable. So that's how the numbers game would work on this.
Do we have anyone else that, okay, Mr. Representative Pruitt, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I'm on or not.
I'm not sure if you, let's see if we are. Try.
Am I there now?
I've got you. That may be the one that doesn't work.
I can't find anything that works, but
Here, use mine.
thank you. I feel privileged to use the chairman's mic. That way he won't interrupt me, right? I'm a bit concerned, if I understand this properly, that enterprise zones are like opportunity zones. It's the same thing as like a hub zone, on the federal level, things like that, where you have to be located within an area that is poverty or low income. And what I understand you're saying is that if a company is outside of that zone, but they hire people or they provide services to that zone, they don't have to be located within the geographical area. Their company doesn't or business doesn't within the zone itself?
That is correct, and that is something that already exists in state law under subsection C, which we basically picked this up and moved forward from that. Subsection C basically says if you have a facility that employs 5,000 people or more and you have an economic tie to an enterprise zone, then you would qualify for this kind of tax treatment.
Ooh, I'm a little bit nervous about, I think it's a good bill. I'm just a little bit nervous about this. It's opening a huge door, though, isn't it?
It would open a door, but that door remains shut because it is subject to the local jurisdiction, i.e. the city or the county,
Makes the decision.
to make the decision, and then it is subject to the voters. So you actually have 2 steps that you have to go through before this could go into effect.
Very good. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you, gentlemen and lady.
Okay, we're going to call for a hearing only on House Bill 984. Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an attempt to try to do something that we've never done before in Georgia, and that's to create a revolving fund, if you will, to try to create and attract some of these attractions all over the state that are sports related. For example, you might have Rome, Georgia, that needed to close a deal to have a very large tennis tournament. This revolving, I'm sorry? House Bill, 984. And this is a hearing only. And it would allow these areas all over the state to tap into this fund to close the deal, if you will, to get these sports attractions there, whether it be in Hinesville, whether it be all over the state, not these major attractions, but to close a deal that allow these cities to bring sports attractions to their area. And with that, Mr. Chairman, since we're short of time, I've got some people here from our hoteliers and the CVBs that might like to speak on the bill, which is their brainchild, and it's this is one of those, thank goodness, that won't cost the state a dime, but it is a fund that can be used in reserve to tap into to close that can be paid back. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'll get Mr. Fennell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Ron Fennell. I represent the Georgia Hotel and Lodging Association, the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau, and some other folks in our hospitality industry, and I've been privileged to do that for almost 20 years. The bill you have before you, Chairman Stevens has given a very fair characterization, but in order to answer some of your questions, we've circulated a deck of materials. And to allow for that, I wanted to invite one of the two guests that I have here today to talk about it, but I wanted to introduce the other, should he be available for a resource if you need it. Dan Corso runs the Atlanta Sports Council, and he works with the other sports commissions across the state. But I wanted to introduce you to the president and CEO of the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau, Mr. William Pate, the Chief Marketing Officer for Atlanta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This bill is an economic development bill that we believe provides opportunity across the state. Often we are having to forego opportunities to bring sporting events into the state because the funds aren't available to make the bids. And what typically happens is when there's an event, and let's use Rome again, it's just a good example, they're interested in bringing the Division III football championship to Rome. What will happen is that will go out to bid, they will receive the bid, and then you have to commit to a financial number in order to win that bid. The problem, particularly in some of the smaller municipalities, is the dollars just aren't there. Even though we have the state facilities and municipal facilities to have the events, the money to begin the process simply isn't there. So what this bill is an attempt to do is to, when we have a bid, we know the number of hotel rooms, we know the number of restaurants, we know other special events that would be around that sporting event. And a model that we've developed with West Georgia shows us the direct state sales tax benefit that's associated with that event. And what this bill would ask is that a municipality could access up to 80% of that direct state tax to make the bid. The wonderful thing about this bill is it's guaranteed success because you don't expend money unless you win the bid. And if you win the bid, once the event is completed, you would restore the funds expended back to the general fund in addition to the other 20% that would come on top of that. We believe this is an opportunity to bring somewhere between 35 and 50 additional sporting events to the state annually. We have a lot of state facilities that we could host these events in, so it provides another benefit to the state. We got the Georgia World Congress Center here today. Of course, as you know, they're going to be managing the Savannah Convention Center, another state facility that we would be able to put a lot of these events in. The Georgia Department of Economic Development has agreed to be the oversight. So a city would look at a bid, put it through the model, send it to the Georgia Department of Economic Development for approval, and then they would be allowed to go forward with the bid. Many times these bids are 4 or 5 years out. So the good news is it's a long runway, and you don't have to expend the funds until roughly 6 to 9 months before the event comes. So there's not a long track trying to follow this money. And so we believe it's a lot of simplicity, no risk, and will provide these municipalities with an opportunity to bring many more events here to our city. We have the unified support of all the sports commissions across the state of Georgia. The Georgia Association of Convention and Visitors Bureaus is meeting right now, and we're seeking approval from that organization, which we believe will get unanimous approval as well. So we have a lot of support for this bill, and we appreciate your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Absolutely. Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? All right.
Gotten my attention today, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned, not really concerned, just want you to better explain. I like the idea, I like the concept. Now, Savannah has a great Convention and Visitors Bureau. Liberty County, for a rural county, we've got a pretty good one. what about a McIntosh County, a Long County? You know, how will we get some smaller counties involved where they can benefit from something like
Well,
that?
one of the great opportunities about this is that there are sporting events of all sizes. So you could get a regional softball tournament and bring it to one of our smaller municipalities. If that's got 20 teams and there are 15 people on a team, that's 300 people plus anybody else who happens to be traveling around. Say that's 350 people. That's 350 hotel room nights. That's dinner at restaurants afterwards. That's any other entertainment that's in that area. So it really scales up very nicely. In fact, it actually works better for the smaller municipalities because in many cases, they're going to be able to fully fund the event based on what will come out of the calculator. Now, what they will do is partner with their hotel community and their Convention Visitors Bureau to make sure they don't book over something that's already in the city. So it'll be a really good partnership there. But that is a great example of somebody who's currently locked out because they just can't get the money, and this would provide them a tool that would allow them, and again, it's events of all sizes, so it's anything that's going to bring large numbers to your area.
Chairman Pruitt. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love the idea, and I do think we can make use of it in rural Georgia. The question is, what about permanent facilities of any kind? Can that be included at all? Like if you had an event to take place and you actually were constructing something that you want to leave in place for future years, can that be included?
Currently in the bill, it's only to bring events. It's not foreseen to be involved in the construction of facilities, if that's the question I think you're asking. This is, as it's currently written, designed only to bring volumes of people to municipalities
Well, I was thinking if it wasn't a venue in place, that could not be worked into it in your bid process, but maybe not. Maybe I'm overreaching it, but I'm trying to help me and Al a little bit. But we may not have a facility for some of these things that we would love to have, and once we could get it started with some seed money, we could. Maybe there's another way we can tie into another bill, but I love.
Well, one of the good things, again, I'll just use an example that maybe helps. These things, as I said, book several years in advance. So if you booked 4 or 5 events that were 4 years out, now you've got to book a business, which you can make the business case to create the facility, and you've got the runway to know, because once the contracts are signed, you're going to get the business. So, that might be an opportunity. If
we could get Al to agree to write a bull every year for 5 years, I think it'd get a great turnout.
Well, we'll move on to another area here. Do we have any other questions from the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Ron, is there anyone else? That's it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. This is just a hearing on that particular bill. A lot of interest here. We look forward to working with y'all on this particular issue there. We have one. We have yours, right? Before we leave here, I have been instructed that you will need to RSVP for the dinner theater no later than Wednesday, tomorrow. And you'll have to provide your own transportation. Parking's $5 there. This is Agatha's, $5 on that. Dress for dinner is casual, and coat and tie is not required, but no flip-flops, please. No flip-flops, Michelle. Thank you. And if you'll do that, respond to Gail. That'll be great. Thank you very much. Thank y'all for coming. Meeting's adjourned.